Okay, hello everyone. Just to remind you, my name is Alisa, and thank you for joining my presentation, though you didn't have choice, but I'm going to tell you about copyright and licenses with a special focus on how it applies to world of academia, to scientific publishing. Okay, first we have to be clear with the terms, so let's see. So for you, the copyright would be a legal framework that grants you as a creator the right to use in any possible way what you have created. For example, your scientific paper. And also copyright will prevent others from misusing what you have created and getting a profit of it. What is really important about copyright, it's really small thing, but copyright is applied not to idea itself or the product, it's applied to the way of expressing it. I will show you an example. For example, what would be the idea behind these two paintings? What is the original idea behind these both paintings? The idea is kind of the same.
You show the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, exactly. They both were drawing the Eiffel Tower, right? So the idea is the same. So the first author won't blame second one on making the same thing because the expression of this idea is not the same. The first author, Georges Seurat, he was a post-impressionist who did his drawing on his style, and then in 20 years, this Robert Delaunay, I always confuse the pronunciation, but anyway, he was an abstractionist, so basically the idea behind these two drawings is the same, but the expression is different, and that's why there is no copyright broken when these two paintings were created. Okay, what is next? In the modern world, when it's applied especially to science, you cannot just create your own work and hold it like, oh my precious. No, you want to share it, right? That's why you have to go through the process of handing your copyright to someone else, to sharing it. And this process of like sharing your copyright with someone is called licensing. So you're giving a permission to others, to a third party usually, to a journal for example, to produce some like other things out of it. For example, how the paper looks, it's not what you created, right? It's what journal created with their own requirements for it. Okay, also when we talk about copyright, it is important to make a difference between copyright and patent. Everyone's seen SpongeBob SquarePants, right? Right? More or less. You know the concept. What should appear here in terms of copyright? In terms of patent, what should appear now? What do you think? In the middle, there would be some important element of this show that will have a patent, if it would be a real thing.
Instead of virus?
No, never mind. It's Krusty Krabs. And the plankton. So, if you come back to your knowledge from childhood, the main conflict between these two creatures is the recipe of a Krabby Patty. So the recipe is a secret of the Krusty Krabs, and in normal speaking, the recipe of the Krabby Patty would be a patented recipe. That's why only Krusty Krabs restaurant can create it. And what Plankton does in the movie, it's basically corporate spying because he's trying to steal this recipe, and this is illegal. The important difference between patent and copyright is, first thing, patent is securing the real thing, so the processes or mechanisms that were developed, the recipe for example here. The copyright is protecting art, the intellectual property, like papers, paintings, music, and whatsoever. Okay, what is also important to know, the copyright is lasting way longer than a patent. Patent lasts 20 years, more or less, so that's how we can say the restaurant is quite modern in the SpongeBob. And the copyright lasts during the long lifetime of the author, plus 70 years usually. So in 200 years, all of our papers will be free. Yeah. Okay. Again, another thing that we shouldn't misuse instead of copyright is a trademark. Simply, it seems like it can be the same thing because trademark is also something to protect intellectual property, but it's something that businesses use. So the trademarks are used to protect the expression of the, I don't know, of some company or whatsoever, and they show us the brand identity. For example, I really like this drink. It's called mate, right? Eltoni. So, here, if you read, at the end of the writing Eltoni, you will have the small circle with R on it. R and TM, it's kind of the same, just it's a trademark. If I really like this drink and I found a way to produce it cheaper, can I just start selling this, which will have the same recipe? Why? What does it break? What law it breaks? It's pronounced, it's on the slide. Well, I cannot just sell it because I break the trademark, right? Okay, what do I do next? I put another label on it. Can I sell it?
Yes.
Yes. According to the trademark law, I can sell it. Because it's not Eltoni, it's, I don't know, Eldino, whatever. I can write whatever I want. Another thing, what if the recipe of the Eltoni would be patented? Would I be able to sell it? No, because now I break what? The patent of the recipe. But in 20 years, if I find a cheap way to produce it, I can do it. So, okay. Also, what is interesting, as I said, we can pass our copyrights to someone else in order to, like, I don't know, widespread it a bit more. In terms of trademarks, we can buy them just to make a franchise. So if you're from other country where Eltoni doesn't exist, you can text them and say, actually, I really want to sell this in my country. Can I buy like the recipe from you? Can I buy the ability to use your logo? And then you pay and they say yes. Okay. Now we're moving to the process of copyright licensing. Adam? Nice, I like animations. Okay. So copyright licensing is a contract between the author and the third party that allows to use copyrighted work by the third party. It can be a contract between you and the journal, for example. I think it would be the most common way of using it in this room because we're all kind of scientists. Okay, let's go. In academic publishing, the role of copyright is undeniably strong because we all want to share our work and it's impossible without handling our copyrights to someone else. So copyright in academic publishing is dedicated to protect intellectual property of the author, then it enables to control access and generate the revenue for the publishers. It also restricts the reuse in terms of if you choose some type of the copyright regulation that makes your work like unprofitable, you can choose this. I will explain it later. Then it will create some problems for the ones who would like to write their own paper based on yours, which will stop them from plagiarism, for example. And also now the copyright in academic publishing, it's like one of the major issues when we discuss about the balances. For example, it would be a balance between paywalls and open access. We all know that publishers would like to get more and more money out of your works, but at the same time, the open access movement is growing stronger and stronger. So the only thing that they would be able to do in future, I think, is to decrease prices for submitting open access papers. But now they don't want to do this because they want to make a lot of money, of course. Also, another question would be the balance between copyright ownership ruling and the dissemination of the research. This is what the authors, so researchers should ask themselves. Would we like to keep the maximum of our copyrights for us? Would we protect our work as strongly as possible? Or we would like to make it as widespread as possible? So every time you submit a paper, you have to ask this question of yourself. Okay, now we're coming to the question of who owns scientific information and why. Who can own the scientific information? The answer actually is in duals. Almost all of them are here. It was found that I came here. So the first party that can own the scientific information is you, is a researcher. Okay. as a researcher, if you own the scientific information, you can use it as much as you want in any way you want because you've created it. But the last question, how widely information spreads? As a researcher, you don't have that much power, social power, to show it to others. You can show it to your colleagues, you can publish it on your web page, but still it won't be as widespread as it would be if the scientific information would be owned by a publisher. So after you do copyright licensing, what is good, publisher will use their facilities to spread what you have achieved, but you will lose part of your copyright or you will lose them completely. And sometimes it can come out with a situation how you cannot reuse your own data just because you were like silly and chose a wrong type of license when you were submitting your paper. Okay, next one. Also funders can be owners of your scientific information, the one that you created, because a lot of our researchers are funded by taxes and usually they also own parts of it in some of the projects. Also the institutions, for example, I'm pretty sure like majority of our salaries are paid by the university, right? Any of your project is funded by non-governmental facilities, or all of you do. Which one is yours?
I'm funded by like a foundation.
Yeah, so, but if
Independent, non-profit, I guess. Or something, I don't know the details, I just get the money.
So you don't know if the information you created belongs to them or to the university?
I don't know, but I would say to them, but I don't know. Or maybe university, I really don't know, yeah.
Okay.
Not to me. That's
So to check this, you really have to check your contract actually, because for example, for my master's project, it wasn't clear at first, but in my contract it was with small letters written that every work I created belongs to the facility I'm working in. And for example, my master's project lasted like 6 months, and I wasn't able to finish writing during this time. And the moment my contract was over, I wasn't able to publish it anymore. So basically, it means that everything I've created would be used by other students who will just get the authorship over work I've done. Just because everything I did was belonging to the institutions, and they decide who owns it after me. Okay, so the situations can be...
At University of Zurich, it's not like this. Actually, if you are employed at the University of Zurich, explicitly the work you do actually belongs to you first before it belongs to the institution.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So you can't even insist on that.
Yeah, it wasn't here, by the way. I should know. Yeah, it wasn't here, but yeah. But I think a lot of institutions are switching from this type of, I don't know, control over researchers, and it's more common for corporate jobs. I think you know these famous examples about the Disney company, where all the authors who created the characters for them, or they were drawing the designs, after they got retired or fired, they couldn't use what they created during their job in Disney, and they owned everything they created. Okay, now it all a bit changes, also because the open access movement is getting stronger, and now I would say there would be not much difference on who exactly owns the scientific information, because everyone wants to know stuff we're doing, everyone wants to share, and everyone wants to get information. But we'll come back to this a bit later. Okay. Among different academic publishers, different copyright licensing processes may run, and they mostly differ in these 4 things. So first of all, you should see if you're submitting the paper for an open access or for a subscription paper. If it's for subscription, you should see if when you submit a paper, you still retain the copyright, or you're handling it to the owner of the paper, to the publisher. And the second, what you should check is if the information you gave to the publisher would be used in the same way as you submitted it. So, for example, you submitted it like choosing it shouldn't be used in like monetized way. then if you choose it, the publisher should allow their readers to use it only in non-profitable way as well. And yeah, and the same is working for open access. You should just check if you still own your paper or you give it to the publisher, and then to see at what extent they take your copyright. Okay. So here are the examples between the different publishers that we discussed today. For example, okay, let's check. Copyright transfer for subscription articles. Yes, almost all of the papers, when you submit your article to them, will take your copyright. Just because this is how it's done, but it doesn't mean it's something really bad, okay? You still can use it. The nature, I think, because they have so many papers, sometimes they can be kind and can retain all your copyright because the paper is new or it's just a review journal. In this case, often you retain your copyright. Okay, then what rights you retain when you submit an article? Okay, for the Oxford University Press, it would be like you are able to teach using information created, and you can create future publication based on what you did. But probably, if you would like to monetize it, so you find out how to utilize information you found in a profitable way, you won't be able to do this because you already handled your copyright to Oxford Press. So it's like it varies between other publishers, but usually the rights are getting limited, but you're still able, in most of the cases, to teach and write new articles based on your previous one. Okay, then for open access articles, you usually retain more copyrights. You can retain actually everything except one to publish it. You cannot start selling your paper when the Nature does the same. Okay. And in terms of licensing, almost all publishers that I've checked now using the Creative Commons licenses system, and it's a standardized way of licensing your publications right now, but it wasn't the same all the time. This standardized way was created not so long ago, in the early 2000s, and it appeared due to rise of open access. As I said, we will come back. So, as Anna showed today in the first presentation of the day, in 70s, 80s, 90s, the prices of journals were increasing really fast, and then researchers community and just the readers were not really pleased with it because, I mean, the rate of spreading their economy, which was the same, though the prices were increasing. So after that, the open access was getting stronger and stronger, and in early 2000, the first declaration appeared that insisted on creating the open access papers and journals, and actually it was really effective because it led to creation of the standardized licensing that I will explain later. And for example, it had a huge effect on National Institute of Health. It's really nice resource where during the 1 year, everything that was created by their fundings, all papers are accessible for free without any subscription. This is just so, yeah. So coming to Creative Commons licenses, as I said, it's a standardized way of licensing the copyright when you're submitting a paper. Basically, these 7 types, it's all you need to know now before you submit a paper. Between these 7 types, you will decide. So the first one is the most common in academic science, I would say. I submitted only 1 paper in my life. And when I was discussing with my supervisor what should I choose, he highly recommended me to use the CCBY because it means all the readers of your paper can do anything they want with your work. They can use it, they can translate it, but they have to give credit to you. So as long as the credit is given to you, they don't break the copyright. And it's the nicest way to spread the information because, for example, I didn't know, that's why I was confused by the last question in your quiz, because the translation without the access, without direct access, is breaking the copyright. I didn't know that actually, but it's fine. So okay, then what can happen if you choose this, just this like copyright licensing way? For example, You let the readers of your paper use your paper as they want, in any way. But imagine, they take your paper, they give credit to you, as they're obliged to, but then they submit their paper to absolutely open access one. It's the last way, where you don't retain any copyright. It means the ones who will read their paper without copyright at all will not even be able to find your paper. Maybe it makes not that much sense, but maybe it will a bit later. So that's why, to protect the way it's submitted, to protect the way it's spread, there is a second way, it's BYSA. So all adaptations of your paper might be shared under the same terms. So if it's just BYSA, it means everything they've done based on your paper will be shared in a way that the credit is given to the creator. Okay, then we go harder. Then it's ND. It's the, I think it's the most restrictive way of submitting a paper. It's the most restrictive license, so no derivatives or adaptations will be done based on your paper, and the credit will be given to you. I think this really limits the way your paper is used, because it means like no one can use your ideas and like create some additional knowledge based on what you've done. All they can do is just to give a credit to you. They still can use your paper in original way to get some money or whatever, but they cannot improve it, and improvement is really needed. For example, with the BYND, if I understood correctly, no one can write a review on your paper because you put this in. You will explain to me if it's wrong, but I think that's how it's done. Okay, then if you don't want to make your paper profitable, you just put the either dollar cross sign, either euro cross sign. So it means only non-commercial way of usage is allowed in your paper. It means if in other countries someone translates your paper, they should give it for free. They cannot sell it. They can give it only for free. And then a really restrictive way is when you add like NC and SA. That means that you restrict the person who will write your work to make it non-profitable as well, because it can be a bit tricky. So you make your work non-profitable, but you let others to adapt it. So they adapt it a little, put their name, and then choose you can make a profit out of it. So that's the way for people who want to make a profit from your paper, make a profit out of it without really crediting you. So you're creating this one, and this is even more restrictive. That means that no one can use your paper, no one can rewrite it, and no one can get money out of it. Sometimes you might think that it's really good, your paper will be kept in original way as it's written, no one will misuse it, but the moment you put like this sign, no derivatives, it means your paper cannot be translated. They cannot simply cite it, not in the way they cite it in their paper. They cannot, for example, write their own abstract and publish it. They cannot use it. So yes, I don't really like this way. And what is really like a modern thing, I think it's not really common, but it's CC0 or public domain, it's called public domain publishing. It's when you give up all the copyright on what you've done, but this is almost not used. So it means that the person who uses information you created shouldn't even credit you. Well, this is something really weird for me. Okay, let's see what are like pros and cons of these types. I already explained a bit, but I will just show them all together. So Creative Commons, they're really flexible. As I showed to you, there are many different variations of this, and it's really easy because, I mean, they're used all over the world. It's a standard that used not only in academic publishing, it's also used, for example, in fine art. You can even use Creative Commons license if you create music, or if you create paintings, whatever, and it's globally recognized, as I said. Problem is potential for misuse. I gave you an example already. You want to protect your work, you choose the most restrictive way, and then what you came up with, no one can even translate your work. And that's probably not what you want. And the thing is, when you put this type of license on it, it means you also cannot use it. It it's also your problem then if you want to redo it, like remix your own work. You cannot do it because now the copyright belongs to the publisher, and you yourself chose no one should change my paper, and then yourself cannot change this paper as well. Okay, then there is still some proprietary license types, but I think it's like they're almost not existing anymore. So proprietary license type is mostly common for the non-open access journals, and sometimes we choose it just because, for example, if you go for a Nature paper, cool, your article was submitted, and they chose, and they ask you to choose, do you want an open access or the subscribed version? You will see that the open access paper is really expensive to submit because in the mind of the publisher, okay, they want to take money from us, they want to make it open access, then what you have to do, you have to pay for all potential buyers of their journal. That's why it's so expensive to submit an open access paper. And then, like, they can play around the licensing as much as they want, but basically then your content is like strongly controlled. Almost no one would be able to misuse it because no one would have proper access to your paper. This I don't really recommend. I don't know, only if you're publishing some secret information, but this is not an option usually. And the public domain type of licensing is like, I think it's really good thing if you share not the knowledge or not the papers, but when you share the data. For example, for ones of us who use with genomes, it's super cool because like when you work with genomic data, it's crucial to compare it with genomes that were already published. And in one paper, you can use thousands of genomes, and if you will have to cite all of them, you will get absolutely crazy. And it makes absolutely no sense because genome belongs to the organism, to the bacteria. You cannot cite the one who just took the bacteria, sequenced the DNA of it, and got the genome. It makes absolutely no sense because I would be able to do it. Everyone who has a machine could do it. That's why I think public domain is really cool for databases such as genomic databases or like protein identities, whatever, or like the molecule types. You cannot make the molecule like non-public. It's just crazy. If it's not pharmacy, but it's different, then it's a patent. Okay, so what to do when you decide between these three, like public domain, Creative Commons, and proprietary? The answer is, like, I don't really know. Everyone decides themselves. As I said, I think the public domain, so non-creditable type of licensing should be done for data that should be like accessible for everyone, such as genomic data. When I choose between Creative Commons, I would choose the first one. So it's just the one that requires everyone who will use the data I produced, the knowledge I produced. They can use it as much as they want, but they have to credit me. This is how I would like to do. And for the proprietary one, actually I didn't really find the good way to use it. Maybe you will help me when we will discuss it. I don't know. So, okay, now I would like to raise a discussion actually for you. What do you think, which type of licenses you would use for your paper? Like, what would you like to use? We can come back to this one. So, if everyone agrees that any type of reuse while you're credited is good for the scientific activities, or not really. Maybe some of you work in the spheres where you're really making something highly monetizable and you don't want it to be used in a good way. It's like, oh, if they find a way to monetize it earlier than me, I don't want them to do this and blah, blah, blah.
You want to make a vote, maybe? Or
Yeah, you can. Okay, it's the best way. Who's going for the first one? As soon as you credit it, they can use it as much as they want. Okay,
change my mind.
okay, the majority. As soon as you credit it, and the person who rewrites is also credited in the same way. Well, this one I never seen someone misuse it because it's not really for academia. I think it's more for like fine arts. I don't know. Who would like to others make no remix of their work? None. Who would like no one to make money out of their research? Four. Okay, nice. Who would like no one to make money out of their research? And also that no one who used their information would be able to make no money from this research. Well, it makes absolutely no sense because once you're saying yes to this, you have to say yes to this. I think it's kind of the same. And yeah, and here we're coming back to this. It's basically who would like their work to be used only in non-profitable way, and no one would be able to remix it. No, okay, there is no dictators here. It's nice. And for open access, everyone is willing to use their work without the credit. Oh, I think so. That's nice. Okay. Okay. Have you already had the experience with transferring your copyright license? Anyone maybe who published? No? Not yet.
Yes, I published, but I have no idea about all of this.
So when you were publishing,
So
you were just signing everything they gave you?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, that's a bit sad. Now we all know that we had to be careful. Yeah, that's, we were publishing in Nature Communications, and when you were going there, it's really nice because it looks like when you choose the type of licensing, you see all of these options and you can read the small like description of how it's done and what it is. But once you remember that you decide to use one, you just forget what it means. You always click this CC BY, and that's how I do it actually. Okay. Do you think that the open access one day will become a standard, and we won't be obliged to credit the information at all? Do you think it's useful actually, in terms of information, not just data? If someone thinks yes, that it will replace all the traditional way, we won't have the licenses in future, you can raise your hand. As expected. Okay. Okay, so what I want to remember is to just be aware of the copyright and to know that there are different types. Indeed, like, and the decision you make when you're submitting a paper can really affect what you're doing. If you want to really protect your work and you're without checking all the consequences, choosing the most restrictive one, you should remember that you restrict yourself as well. You cannot use your own work, and it's really bad. And also, do not hesitate to ask for help. You can ask for help from your colleagues who already submitted papers, from your supervisor, or even in the library, because they do it a lot, I guess. Right? Okay, this was my 2 advices, and thank you for your attention.